here, of course.
Well, I'm so happy to be here. I started in the same room with Colton 5 years ago. I think it was 5 years ago. Is that correct, Colton? I didn't think where this journey is going to take us, but everybody who had one thing in common, and that was health, found their way here. And that's why I'm here again. So I went through a lot of challenges in my life. And if it hadn't been for these challenges, I would never be where I'm at today. I would never be able to have helped the people that I helped. So I now look at them as stepping stones. And these stepping stones are so important to advance. You become more compassionate. You learn so much from those experiences that's invaluable. You can't go to a college or read a book as much as you learn from these experiences that you have yourself. And my patients are actually my best teachers. So I was challenged to find out resolutions or solutions for everybody's health. And I realized soon that everybody's so different. You can't take someone from Hawaii and put them on the same diet as someone that's an Eskimo, So from the very beginning, I was looking at biochemical individualities, and that's what kind of led me in this direction. Along the way, because of these challenges, I came across Kangen water just like you guys did. I'm sure you all had some kind of health challenges that brought you to this point, So I'll talk to you a little bit, and not to speak too much about myself, but show you how I use Kangen, why I use Kangen, and how it all ties together. You're not selling a water machine, you're actually giving somebody their health back. Amen. And you always have to remember that. So from the very beginning, when I started promoting Kangen, I did not focus, I didn't even know the marketing plan, tell you the truth, at all. I just focused on what that person needs. And everything just kind of fell in place. And to this day, I still do the same thing. So when you hear me speak, you'll hear me speak a lot just about the health picture, because it's up to you to take that information and pass it on. Okay. I have to make this disclaimer. This is not been evaluated by the FDA. It's strictly what I have learned in the last 32 years, and I'm just passing this on to you, okay? This is not to be interpreted as giving medical advice. Here's my background, just briefly for those of you who don't know me yet. I came to this country I translated languages, okay? Never thought I would be in health. So as I had my own personal challenges, nobody could help me as far as conventional medicine. So I had to find alternatives. And what I found was every time I had a challenge, that's what got me over the edge and got me my health back. So that's when I became a clinical nutritionist first. And I was counseling people on nutrition 32 years ago. And then, of course, they started limiting my license, what I could do. So I said I had to get another license. And Chinese medicine always fascinated me because it looks at the whole body. You can look at somebody's blood test, and you could be dead by the time you get the results back. So, I believe that looking at visual signs, the Chinese had 5,000 years to look at visual signs. So to this day, I will look at everybody's tongue, fingernails, and different visual signs, and then correlate it with the blood test and correlate it with the testing that I do, which is bioenergetic testing out of Germany. But this is the 32 years that I accumulated this and learned a lot, and I'm still learning. I've seen over 50,000 patients by now. 50% of them fly from out of the country, out of the state. So actually I have patients in Japan, in Australia, wherever you want to be. Because what happens is somebody's helped, right? They sit on the airplane and talk to somebody else and say, well, I have this problem, nobody has been able to help me. And they find their way into my clinic. So I actually do a lot of testing by distance. So I test people in the French mountains. And I get very good reception there, better than here sometimes, People in North Carolina, I have to send them to a local little market where they have better Wi-Fi so I can actually get a better reception. When I became involved with Kangen, like I said, I'm focused mostly on this is what everybody needs. This is a missing link, and those of you who have seen my book, The Missing Link, is why I call it, it's a missing link, because the water is toxic in this country. And since I came from over there, I knew what good water tasted like, and that's what I was looking for. And when I found Kangen, this was it, right? So I became a 6A in 4 months. Now remember, I still didn't know the marketing plan at that point. And altogether, this is just an estimate. I've made over time with health sales, so wellness products, over 70 million so far. This is my story, okay? So first thing that happened, I gained 30 pounds when I came to this country. And I was not drinking sodas, anything bad. I was eating peanut butter jelly sandwiches. Because I never had that over there, right? So now I know it was all bad. And then I said, what's wrong with this diet here, So I found this German store. It was called Wunderbar. I don't know how many of you remember. It's a little chain in the mall. And it had a German bread that I grew up on, the kind you use as a doorstep, And I changed my diet, just cooking myself and eating what I knew was coming from Germany. I bought everything from over there. And I dropped 30 pounds in a month and a half. So then I realized, okay, the diet in this country, there's something wrong. So that's when I did a PhD in nutrition. I really just wanted to know how to eat right and understand this better. It wasn't really meant that I was going to practice that, right? I was still translating at the time. So that was my first challenge. Then I got poisoned with mercury. I don't know if you can see the clicker here. Yeah, a little bit. Because I had lots of mercury fillings in my teeth. So that took 15 years for me to become mercury-free. I basically lost my mind at age 23. Wow. And I have no idea what happened. But I noticed one thing. Every time I'd go to the dentist and I left the dentist, I could not remember anything. I couldn't remember my own address or my phone number. So the many times I called my husband and he picked me up and I blanked out. So eventually I figured out it was mercury poisoning. So I overcame that. And then I had a vaccine, a smallpox vaccine that they gave me in order to go back to Europe. They wouldn't let me get an entry visa to visit my family because I didn't have any vaccines, right? So they insisted I took a smallpox vaccine. Not knowing any better, I did, right? I wanted to go back to visit my family. And it went in my arm and it became totally necrotic and they wanted to amputate my arm. So at that point, I said, okay, I'm only 23, there's got to be another answer. So I really started searching the answer in natural medicine because that's all they could offer me, amputation, right? And I remember my grandfather, he went through 2 world wars, and he said that when they had soldiers that had the legs all ripped up from the shelling, if they found local farmers, they would have bee propolis, they would give them bee propolis, smudge it on their legs and eat it, and they wouldn't have to amputate their legs. So that was in back of my mind, that if it worked for them, it's got to work for me. So I imported bee propolis. It's a natural antibiotic. And I took it by a spoonful, smudged it on my arm, and I got my arm back. It took a total of 7 years. I actually had to find a homeopathic antidote eventually to let go of a little bulb that was still sitting there that wouldn't go away. But my fingers became better, no longer necrotic, So that was the next challenge. But you never give up. See, 7 years, right? But I knew the answer was in natural healing. So you have to stick with it. And if you have a goal and you believe in it, you're going to see it through. So then I had a parasite in my brain. We had cats when I was growing up, and it ate half of my brain and my left eye. So I healed that naturally. What else? And so I grew up on organic food, but when I came to this country, I developed breast cancer. And it was caused by a single chemical called DDT. The only reason I was able to figure that out is because of the testing device that I had, and that's what I found. And when I detoxed that, it took about 4 months. I got rid of the breast cancer naturally as well. Never went through conventional care. So these were my challenges, but I tell you, I needed all those challenges. Without each one of these, I would not have learned what to do in each situation. And that gave me the confidence to work with patients, and it didn't matter what the name of the disease was or whatever they had. It's a way that you can heal. I just convinced them they have to do it. I just tell them what to do. I've done that. I've been there. I've gone that road. I just told them this is what you need to do, and if you follow me, you will get better. And that hope that they got, which they never got from anywhere, kept them going until they see their goals. So this is how I stayed in practice for 32 years. Okay, so healing, let's talk about healing. So with natural remedies and the holistic approach, I was able to overcome everything I had, right? I became a licensed nutritionist, acupuncturist, and holistic health practitioner, specializing in bioenergetic medicine. Future medicine will be only energy medicine, because that's tuning into your body what your body needs, right? And it's non-invasive. And everything we have, every food, every microorganism has a certain energetic frequency. If you can figure out how to treat that microorganism with frequencies, you can eradicate them, right? So this is what I made it as my goal. So this is how I see things. This is a testing device, and I took a snapshot. This is an older picture because things have changed now a little bit. But I took a snapshot of a patient that I was testing, and you see everybody has a certain range, okay? That's a homeostasis, that's balance in the body. That person's range was 10.32, which is a good range. Like 8 to 12 we consider normal, right? Now if you look at the chemicals here, this happens to be heavy metals. Can you see the numbers from back there? 193, 173, 170, and so on, right? It should be close to that range. This is how people are toxic, and that's why I can see what's going on with them, right? Then I have to find a way to detox them once I see that. So a couple other examples. This one happens to be pesticides. You see those numbers, 488, 440, 395? And then this one is pharmaceuticals. Now, we have so many pharmaceuticals in our bodies nowadays because it comes mostly from the water. More than half the pharmaceuticals don't break down in the environment. So they stay there. And they get that same toxic water gets sprayed back on all our food supply and goes into our homes. You know, that's how we reabsorb them. So we could see all this. Now, the unfortunate thing is that in 2016, the FDA decided we shouldn't have access to this information, right? So they took all the pharmaceuticals out, and they took all the health conditions out that we were able to test. So, but I saw it long enough, for many, many years, that I could see that these numbers here, pesticides, heavy metals, and pharmaceuticals were always the highest numbers of anything that we saw. Wow. This one is pesticides. Now, the reason I put that in, you can see like 2,4-D, right? So that's an Agent Orange. You think Agent Orange is no longer used? It's still used today. It's mixed with other chemicals. And all it takes is one of these to cause a cancer. Discovered Kangen water. So this is how it happened. I had a long-term patient, probably has been coming here about 20 years. And I sit down with him, we do the testing, and all of a sudden his readings have been pretty balanced. All of a sudden all his readings are really high, like 300, 400, right, on all the chemicals, the metals, the pesticides. And I told him, I said, are you doing something? Are you remodeling your house? What are you doing? Are you doing something? And he goes, no. He said, I haven't done anything different. And he says, on the other hand, I don't know, does it have something to do with water? Because my friend of mine just gave me a gallon of water, and he wants me to try this water and see what I think, right? And I've been drinking this water. And I have been looking for good water for years, right? I've never been happy what I found and what I tested. I've never seen chemicals come out like that as I saw with this particular water, right? So I said, is your wife drinking the same water? He goes, oh yes. So she happened to be there at the same time. So I said, let me test her too. So I put her on the machine too. Guess what? The same thing happened with her. All her numbers are really high because she was drinking the water too. So I said, what kind of water are you drinking? He says, it's called Kangen water. So that's what started it. So I said, bring me a gallon. I want to try it myself, right? So that was the beginning. Now I've been looking for good glacial waters. We call them glacial waters because Europe has a lot of glacial waters. Even in the cities, they got glacial waters, you know. Here they come off from treatment plants that they channel back into the rivers, and then so many miles down the rivers, they scoop it up again. So I said, this is the first water I saw that actually has this impact, that this man has been detoxed a lot, that actually it's able to bring so many chemicals out so fast, right, to such a degree. So that was the beginning of the Kangen water. So I had a NASA physicist, I had a quantum physicist as a patient, and a water treatment expert of 40 years. So I gave them each the Kangen machine, and I said, look it over, look at the specs. The NASA physicist took it all apart, right? And they all came back, this is the only water we would ever drink. That's what the comment was, right? And the NASA physicist actually compared it to 28 different machines, and he gave me 30 pages of specs that he had written together. So I knew I had the good thing. So I said, okay, this is the water I'm going to endorse. So that was the beginning of my water story. So as I mentioned, the Kangen water molecules resemble the glacier waters from Europe, and I'll show you some pictures a little later. It's biologically active. This is the easiest form of water for the body to absorb because it comes from nature. It's naturally in tune with our body. It has a hexagonal shape, and it has to have a hexagonal shape to actually fit our cells, right? Most of the, as you know, if you do comparison water machines, that hexagonal shape gets broken down when it travels over these inferior plates that they have. It no longer has an hexagonal shape. That was one of the things that I learned from my NASA physicist. And it's the most effective one for detox. And that's what we need in the clinic, because there's only two things, bad diet and bad water, right? So the ionization process from a Kangen water machine is the only process that I found that breaks up the chemical bonds from these disease-causing toxins, which we have too many of. So these toxins are stuck to the water molecule even after you filter it. So all the filtration devices really are not anything to talk about, really. The plate technology is the difference, which all of you know, that allows the water molecule to actually take on that electrical charge and keep that electrical charge for days, and it carries it deep into your system. And the electrical charge is needed because we're body electric, That's just why distilled water is so bad and osmosis is so bad, because it's a flat water. It has no electrical charge. So it has to pull minerals out of your body in order to metabolize through the system. The Kangen doesn't have to do that. So detox a little bit. Without detoxification, your body cannot regain a balance and restore function to the diseased tissues. You cannot lose weight. You might lose weight, but you're going to regain it out if you don't detox. Inflammation is the root cause of disease, and I think many people know that now. Now we can measure inflammation with a number in the blood test called C-reactive protein. And C-reactive protein should be a 1, which I hardly ever see. Most of the time it's above 10. And the higher it is, the more inflammation, the higher it goes, and the homocysteine goes high too, you can have strokes and heart attacks. Leading causes of death, they have, hasn't changed much since 2009. Cancer is now moving into first place. That's the only thing that's changed, right? So it's all related to bad water and bad diet, mostly. So these are the current health statistics. Now, 1 in 3 men and 1 in 2 women will get cancer in their lifetime. Now, these are medical statistics. These are not my figures, right? Now look at the earlier dates. In 1900, only 1 in 20. 1940, 1 in 16. 1970, 1 in 10. In 2000, 1 in 6. Does anybody question where we're going with this? And are we winning the war on cancer like we're supposed to be? No. So what's the root cause? Inflammation, right? All these diseases, doesn't matter what your name is, the bottom line is it comes from inflammation. And inflammation starts in the gut. Most of them have gut issues. You've heard of dysbiosis of gut, leaky gut, right? It's all the same thing. And let's think I have a couple more pictures of that. Inflammatory bowel disease. You know how many people have problems with that, right? Stomach issues. A lot of them had H. pylori. H. pylori is a bacteria that causes nausea, acid burning, indigestion. And it used to be like I would see 1 in 10 people. Now it's like 6 in 10 people that are coming in with this bacteria. A little bit is okay, but it's just the excess, that causes problems. So then you don't digest the food properly, and then they put you on acid drugs, anti-acid drugs. All they do is reduce the acid. It doesn't kill the bacteria, and that causes you not absorb proteins, and then you become very depleted, very deficient in every way. So water and earth, those are the 2 basic molecules that we live off. We get our nourishment from the earth and our hydration from the water. So, how many times does the medical profession sit you down and say, are you really drinking enough water? Are you drinking the right water? Are you eating the right food, right? If you go to the hospital, do they ever say you have to look at those two? Make sure that you get the basic nutrients. So whatever water comes in contact with, right, and there's so many chemicals, all this gets flushed out back into our groundwater and back on our food. The most harmful chemicals that's in the environment are xenoestrogens. We call them gender benders. Almost more than 90% of cancers nowadays are due to gender benders, so it's the xenoestrogens. And xenoestrogens basically are chemicals that we have in the environment that become fake estrogens. It gets in our body, and the body recognizes it as estrogen or testosterone, and it pulls it in, and it goes so far in, and it says, oops, it's not the same molecule, it's something different about it. So then it has no other choice but to store it. And it will store it in the fatty tissue of the body, whether it's the brain, whether it's the breasts, the ovaries, in the men it's the prostate, wherever it can store it, right? So these xenoestrogens become cancer-causing estrogens. When you hear of somebody have estrogen-dominant or estrogen-positive cancers, like breast cancers, which is most of them nowadays, that's what that means. The medical profession doesn't understand that these chemicals have to be detoxified in order for the cancer to stop growing. They would just actually do surgery. They'll give you some drugs that block the estrogen. They know that they have to block it, but the blocking it doesn't eliminate these estrogens, so they're still there. So if you go through a cancer therapy and you have not detoxed properly, you will get it back. And this is why most of the cancers do come back, unless someone has dramatically changed their lifestyle and their diet. Most important thing to remember, these estrogens. What's happening with men, the men would convert their testosterone to estrogen. So then their testosterone is low, right? Then they go to the doctor and they say, I think my testosterone is low. They do a blood test. They say, yes, the testosterone is low. We can give you a testosterone shot, right? Or pills or whatever. There might be bioidentical pellets, whatever. Well, all that happens at that point is that men will convert that testosterone he just got into more estrogen. So if they're already prone to prostate problems, prostate inflammation, they develop a prostate cancer so much faster. Okay? This is why we have 1 in 3 now get cancer, 1 in 2 or 3. Now, these xenoestrogens, of course, cause feminization of fish, animals, and humans. We've heard of all these mutations, the frogs with 7 legs. In Florida, we have, in Lake Apopka, we have alligators that they found that they thought were female alligators, but they found actually were male, but they had no testicles because of all the pesticide runoffs from those local orange groves. And these are the most common endocrine disruptors. Everybody knows bisphenol A, which is in plastic bottles, right? Plastics and bisphenol A, parabens in skincare, PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls, dioxin bleaching compounds. Everything that's white has dioxins in it, right? Pesticides, herbicides, and heavy metals, and there's tons of them. I just listed 3 of the major ones. And you know what? I have never seen a patient that didn't have these 3 heavy metals. Because arsenic can be in soil, and if let's say you take rice proteins or eat rice, it cleans the soil, so you absorb the arsenic from the soil, and it will be in the rice kernel. So when you have protein powders that they haven't really checked for metal residue, you could be drinking arsenic. And we've seen that in a clinic. Companies that were supposed to be the most reputable companies, when they were tested, they had the highest level of arsenic. So bisphenol A, I think most of you know about this, but I can see they tested that one. It declined the sex ratio below 35% in laboratory animals, So they acted more like females. All the fibroids, uterine fibroids, prostate tumors, miscarriages, cancers, of course, fibrocystic breast disease, always means an estrogen-dominant condition, always. We do digital thermographies in our clinic, so that's, instead of doing mammograms, we offer our female patients, male as well, thermographies that do not use radiation. And I can tell you that probably more than 80 to 85% of those that come back are fibrocystic situations. So when you do mammograms, sometimes they'll say you have fibrocystic breast, but you have to do a biopsy to really find out, right? With the biopsy, there's always a 50% chance that you can spread a cancer. With the thermograms, we can actually tell if it's fibrocystic or something else going on. But in every case, if we have fibrocystic, I will recommend estrogen converters, I will recommend Kangen water and detoxification. And then we retest 2 or 3 months later to check to see if the fibrocystic situation has resolved itself. You can prevent cancers in that way 100% more effectively than any drugs that they can offer you. And that's how I overcame mine, right? Because DDT is a xenoestrogen. I grew up on organic food, but we used these little powder boxes that we used for killing ants, right? And we played in them when we were kids. So that's how I got exposed to that. So, of course, almost 40 years later, it developed into breast cancer. So plastics were investigated in 1891 already as an estrogen replacement. They knew since then how estrogenic plastics were, right? And it's still on the market. It's still not being recycled. I remember recycling plastics in every can, and we had so many recycling bins when I was a child in Europe. In this country, I mean, some states are better about it than others, but we still don't recycle. It's just unbelievable. This is the latest chemical, which is now responsible for a lot of cancers. You've heard of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and the Monsanto trials, right? So they've lost the second lawsuit because this gentleman had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. We have known that for many, many years, and now it's finally coming out. And that's your Roundup. So they're still selling Roundup in the stores, right? And I'll get calls all the time from patients saying, I have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Do you think you can help me? And I can't help but ask them this question. I would say, that happened to me last week. The gentleman called me and I said, did you by any chance spray Roundup in your own yard? And he says, oh, I always walk around with that tank on my back spraying the weeds, right? It almost never fails. Guess what else has the most Roundup on there that you might be consuming? Grains. Wheat, corn, soy, all the grains. They can spray 100 times more Roundup on those grains because they're all genetically modified, so they can spray as much chemicals as they want. The plant won't die, right? But as it gets into your body, what's happening now, your body doesn't recognize it as food anymore. It thinks it's a toxin. It starts to react against it, and then you get leaky gut, and then you get tumors. Proved by the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, in Lisa Duo, a new chemical where they mix Roundup with Agent Orange. It's been out for several years now. 178 million pounds of this chemical were sprayed in 2015, especially grains. Can't get away from it. Cancer-causing atrazine was outlawed in Europe in 2004, right? It's one of the worst pesticides, most well-studied pesticides on the planet. Studies have linked it to low sperm count, low fertility, ovarian, breast, and prostate cancers. And the manufacture of atrazine was supposed to clean up all this stuff from the water supply, but it never happened, really. So this is how you have to look at it. You have a corn plant, and they spray the corn plant, so they spray lots of it. Well, some goes into the corn plant, but guess where the majority goes? Yeah, in the soil with the water. So how do we develop cancer? A little summary. Chemicals from food, water, and environment enter the body by absorption from the gut, the small intestine, the large intestine. Chemicals change the integrity of the gut, allowing bacteria, parasites, and fungi to thrive. And nobody is without those three nowadays. Glyphosate or endocrine disrupting chemicals inhibit this enzyme P450. That's a group of enzymes that detoxify the xenobiotics or the chemicals. This is a cancer protective enzyme. The lack of this enzyme allows the chemicals in the gut to become 100 times more toxic, and thus the gut lining is damaged and has no protective barrier. This allows the chemicals to escape to the brain and many other parts of the body, allowing tumors to form. Bottom line, right? This is one of my favorite slides because it summarizes it all. And one other thing, in 2011 study detected Roundup in 60 to 100% of all US rain and air samples. Look at that, right? And then 182 volunteers from 18 different countries were tested for glyphosate in the urine. All city dwellers that never handled a pesticide, 44% tested positive. So it's in the water. California allows 1,000 times more glyphosate in drinking water than needed to cause breast cancer. Roundup in water. You start seeing all these articles everywhere now. This is collected a few years back, but you can read about it. It's everywhere now. So glyphosate induces human breast cancer cells via estrogen receptors. Okay, this is from Food and Chemical Toxicology. Glyphosate has been linked to all these diseases. Now we know, right? It doesn't matter what it is because it's all a xenoestrogen. Okay. So each person in the US consumes about 290 pounds of pesticides and other chemicals every year. Where does that go? It has to stay. 1 billion pounds of pesticides are sprayed in the United States yearly. And Monsanto has been banned in most of the European countries. So I have patients, that they cannot eat a grain here. Their lips would swell, their brain swells, but they can go to Europe and eat the grains there and have zero reactions. Yeah. Doesn't happen to everybody. Some people, there's like 28 components of gluten, right? You might react only one of the 28 components. So some can handle some and some can't, But if you just react to one component of gluten, you have a reaction. And the latest studies are showing that if someone has an autoimmune disorder, almost every autoimmune disorder has a problem with gluten. And I still believe it started with let's say the GMO chemicals, because that weakened our lining. And then you start reacting to gluten after that. So the primary factor was the GMO chemicals. So you want to eat organic, get GMO-free foods as much as you can, If the more you buy them, the more manufacturers are going to be forced to produce them and get rid of the other stuff on the market. So remember to wash your produce at 11.5 water, because that takes off the pesticides, If it's not grown organically, it could still have some inside, but you're going to get a large part off at least, If it's grown organically, it could still have traveled through the dust and the produce places, it comes in contact with a lot of things. So you want to wash the organic produce too. It really, really helps. And you all know how much better tomatoes and everything tastes when you wash it in that, right? Yep. So how do we store these chemicals? This is cellulite. See the little dimpling effect? These cells, these fat cells, can reach 200 times the normal size, right? And they will store these cells. So when you lose weight, the fat cells shrink, but the toxins are still there, so it's just going to fill up again, right? So you have to detox, drink the water with it to not fill up these cells again. So that's the picture in the US now, right? All the visceral fat. Obesity costs the US $167 billion annually, and this figure I got 2 years ago, so it's probably even more by now, So this is a sign of an estrogen-dominant condition. Show you a couple more pictures where that is here. So how do we protect ourselves? Avoid GMO foods. Corn, soybeans, these are the most common ones, right? Also sugar beets, for example. So you want to eat everything organic. Avoid exposure and use of environmental chemicals, fertilizer, pesticides, cleaning products. There's so many in the household that you can get toxic with. Avoid synthetic skincare. In our clinic, we only use Eminence organic products from Hungary, because they're really, really clean. And if it comes from Europe, it's going to be a lot better. There's other good organic companies out there. I just happen to like that particular line, But I've seen so many patients get either breast cancer, ovarian cancer, because of the skincare that they were putting on them, This is why doctors like hormone replacement, whether it's bioidentical or regular, as creams, because it stays there all day long. It can draw from the skin all day long. So we had an interesting situation with a patient, a man who had an estrogen level, progesterone level was over 20,000. Normal would be about 200 to 300 for men, right? Trying to figure out how he got that. Found out his wife was using a progesterone cream. That's how he absorbed it. So you're not immune. So drinking plenty of microclustered water, right, to counteract whatever is already in your system. Chlorination of water, I mean, it's not just a chlorination, but it allows other bacteria to start growing, and it forms a chemical called trihalomethanes. The scientists said it's one of the most toxic chemicals that they ever measured is trihalomethanes. And then this one too, iodoacetic acid, is a disinfection byproduct found in the drinking water. It's considered the most toxic chemical ever found, linked to all types of cancers, of course, you know. There's another one, I don't know if I have it here, triclosan, you know, the antibacterial soaps, very toxic chemical. They're trying to take it off the market now, but so every time it says antibacterial, don't use it. It's a chemical. It just goes to your liver, and it becomes a xenoestrogen. Prescription medicine in fish. I was reading an interesting story about shrimp. The population of shrimp is declining because the shrimp has now so much Prozac in their system that they become more bold. So they're venturing into the deeper waters and they're getting gobbled up by the big fish. Imagine that? They're specific talk about one chemical only, I mean one prescription medicine only, Prozac, right? What about all the others? Contaminants in the Great Lakes. Only half of the drugs and other emerging contaminants are removed from the sewage. You know, we all know that. That's why we could test it, you know. Why does everybody have drugs in their system, has never taken a drug, has drugs in the system from the water. Over 1,400 wastewater treatment plants in the US and Canada discharge 4.8 billion gallons of untreated effluent into the Great Lakes every day. So they told us when I was pregnant 30 years ago that if we eat salmon out of the Great Lakes twice a week, that the baby's IQ could be a lot lower. So not to eat salmon that much from the Great Lakes, 30 years ago. So most commonly found drugs are always antibiotics, cholesterol drugs. This is something that I found, you know, from testing, so this is what I put together. And this is also in the environmental health news. Most common pollutants in the water, again, I think now you know them all. We talked about all of them. And then the heavy metals, it's not the only ones. Fluoride was outlawed in Europe many, many years ago, probably close to 40 years now, still in the United States. It's a neurotoxin. It's a pesticide in China, right? And it models the teeth. It causes brain damage. You know, it causes a lot of problems. I might have a slide in there, everything that it does. But radioactive metals, there's more of those now because a lot of them come from fracking chemicals. You know, when they dispose of nuclear waste deep in the ground, and they're supposed to put it at about 1,000 feet, but they're putting it around 500 feet. The water table is around 400 feet. So now all these radioactive metals are coming back out through the water into our drinking water. And they've been doing that for 65 years. Okay, agricultural runoffs, you know, it changes the pH so much, so you have nothing but green sludge that's growing. Florida had a bad case this year, you know, on the coastline where there was a sewage pipe that was found to be untapped, and it was draining into the canals, and all the fish died, all the manatees died, you know. That's the effluents from the agricultural runoffs and the sewage, you know. Okay, so restoring, keeping our health, depending on those two things. Again, detox and nourishment, just a little reminder. So what type of water is needed to break the strong chemical bonds of these extreme toxic chemicals? Glacial waters, right? So these glacial waters, you can see the bluish tint. Now, I grew up in Austria in the mountains, so we could see the blue waters, you know, and that's where we used to, we'd go swimming in the lake, you could see 30 feet into the bottom of the lake, you know. So some pictures of that. This is actually a picture from my hometown. You can see that blue water there. And this is a picture of the lake that we used to live on. We could see easily 30 feet into the ground. They do not allow motorboats there, just sailboats, so that they don't pollute the water. So counting water is like having glacier water in the kitchen. Oh. This one? Okay, one more? Is that what okay. So our source water is coming from the treatment plants, right, and into the rivers. And then it's scooped up so many miles, it's scooped back out, and it goes into the homes. And here's one of the city water pipes we could find a picture of. You let him know what you... So this is glacial waters. They promote longevity and true health. See how they're oxygenated when they run over these pebbles, over those rocks? And you know, most of you have heard maybe of Dr. Emoto about these water crystals, right? So they form beautifully when you freeze them. So what is these elements of the earth? So that's all the minerals that are in the ground. And the energetic imprints. Water has memory, so everything that it passes through, it remembers, right? And it carries vital health-giving information if it is good water like this, and the memory, we talked about that. The special properties of glacial waters. The minerals, it has high bipolar molecules, hydrogen and oxygen. Hydrogen has a positive charge, oxygen a negative charge. This forms a crystal-like structure. That's why they form such beautiful crystals when you freeze them. And it's biological in nature. Biological means it's really in tune with our body, right? It has a low surface tension of 45 dynes per square centimeter. So this is called the wet water. Ordinary water has a surface tension of 74 or 73 or more. This is something that Dr. Flanagan, the first one who checked microcrystalline water, was testing it. And this is what they came up with. So they said the glacial waters have a dyne of 45, where the waters here between 70 and 85, right? So that means that when you put something in the water, that it sinks when it has a low surface tension. If it has a high surface tension, it just floats, it doesn't do anything, right? So that's how else it becomes more hydrating when it has a low surface tension. It can penetrate the fatty protein layer, and also, so it's hydrophilic and lipophilic. It can go either way, but through the fats or through water. Patrick Flanagan, PhD, he was a child prodigy and inventor. He's the one who had invented the microhydrogen microclustered water. How many of you know microhydrogen clustered water? Anybody? It's way even before my time. But we used to get the first microclustered water in the clinic. And it was a powder. We had to take lots of water, put the powder in the water, and then stir it and then drink it really fast, right? And it tasted like sand. It was terrible. But it was our first microclustered water. We used to have good results with just gum disease and stuff like that, just using that. So that was the beginning. But he said the hydrogen ions are 2,000 times smaller than your red blood cells. They can move in and out of the cells efficiently. The cells require water with a surface tension of 45 in order to deliver nutrients and take out the toxins, right? Bottled water loses electrons, becomes oxidized water, becomes a free radical, and accelerates the aging process and damages the cells. Any bottled water, as soon as it goes into a bottle, it changes, right? The Kangen water retains that electrical charge because of the ionization of the superb plates that we have. So these microclusters, now the smaller they are, the more it can stay suspended in the water, the more it can hydrate. The normal water has larger clusters, I think you know all about that already. Change your water. Dr. Coanda, he was a hydrologist, and he lived in 1885 to 1972, so quite a while ago. But it's interesting the work that he has done. He was the inventor of fluid dynamics. He made the first snowmaking machines in the French Alps. And he researched water for 60 years. He lived with the Hansa people most of his life. The Hansa people are those that become 100 years old or more, and no diseases. So he studied the centenarians, the 100-year-old people from 5 different mountainous regions: Hansaland, Vilcabamba in Ecuador, in Georgia, in Russia, in Mongolia, and Peru. And he said what they all had in common, they all different diets. Some were vegetarians, some were total meat eater. They didn't eat anything but meat. But the ones that had longevity, he said they all had the cleanest glacial waters. And you might have read something about the blue zones, water from the blue zones, right? Dr. Vincent, another hydrologist in France, he's analyzed the water from many cities in France and was able to show the health of the people in each town had a direct correlation with the quality of water that they drank. This is Dr. Emoto with his crystals. The Messages in Water is the book that he wrote. And this is some of the pictures that he took. Water can hold memory, right? So they crystallize and look beautiful like that if it's the right water. And this is what distilled water looked like, and this is what the river water from someplace in Japan looked like when he took a picture, froze it again, right? Tap water. How do you like that one? So we are drinking, but not hydrating. The beverages all we drink are all very acidic, you know that. We made too many refined foods, denatured proteins. You know that food, keeping your food in a microwave totally denatures that protein. The body does not utilize it correctly. And even if you just cook the water in the microwave, it changes it also. If you feed it to plants, the plants will die. Environmental contaminants getting in our food more and more. I think that's all the stuff that you know. Reverse osmosis, you know, is not good because it has no minerals, and the minerals have to be pulled out from your body, so you demineralize your bones. I see that in the clinic a lot. When they, you know, RO water used to be clean water compared to other waters out there, and we used to use it at the beginning too, till we realized all those people are coming in with bone density problems and demineralization, you know. We stopped using it. The molecular structure of the water has changed now. It doesn't fit in our cells anymore. So I've had patients come in and they have a gallon of water with them and they put it next to them as we're testing. They finish that whole gallon within an hour and they're still thirsty. It's because they're not hydrating. So health-giving properties of water, it has to have cleansing abilities, be able to carry minerals and nutrients, oxygen, and can move in and out of the cells efficiently. It has to have the right hexagonal shape, right? It needs to be alkaline, and the ORP needs to be minus. So that is you do all these tests, so you know about that already too. So water carries nutrition into the cells. Pure, vital, microacid water is essential to carry toxins out of cells and nutrition into the cells. You're gonna double the effect of any nutritional program that you give a person if they drink that water. This is one thing I noticed in the clinic. The patients who bought the water machine and used it along with my herbal and homeopathic remedies, if I had to give them 4 bottles of a herbal remedy, if they drank the water, sometimes only 2 bottles, sometimes 1 was needed. And it had the same effect. So you're saving money in the long run, even with nutritional supplements. Plants love Kangen water. I have some pictures in my office where we have 28 blossoms on one orchid, all because of the Kangen water. We did some experimenting with Kangen water.
What level?
Usually beauty water, beauty water. They like a little bit more acid. And structured water is the foundation for optimal health, as you know now. So this concludes my talk. And this is our building. I don't know if you can see the website on the bottom, but if you want to look it up, it's www.holisticoptionsinc.com. So thank you very much for your attention.